Hello again. Puddock's up there. He's saying a sketch at word book so he can see what's going on. A Laddie Cawed Christmas. Let's continue with this really good story. See how you're enjoying it. Next chapter's called Rumbling Wames and Other Nightmares. Nicholas slept outside a summer. He spent ilka day, as Auntie Carlotta had told him today, looking for Scran. Fae first licht till gloaming. One day he saw the bear again. The bear stood upright. But Nicholas waited, stayed calm. Be the forest. The bear stood there, peaceful and frixome at once. The bear that had chased his mother towards the well. But he couldna hate this crater. Look at me, said Nicholas. I'm skinny as a skelf, nae meat on my banes. The bear seemed to agree and shuffled awa on half hours. Was there a mair unlucky laddie in the world? Aye, there was. There was a laddie ca'd Gatu that bade in India, who had been struck by lightning while daying the toilet in a burn. That wasna funny. But still, it was a dreich, joyless time for Nicholas. Auntie Carlotta was never happy with the mushrooms and herbs he brought him. The only real comfort, a pairt fae Micah, was in counting down the days and weeks and months till his father returned. Which she did by scarring lines in the pine tree next to the bothy. Twa months passed, then 3. Where are ye? He'd speer among the trees. The only sound that came back to him was that of the wind, or a distant specht chapping at the trunk of a tree. Auntie Carlotta got worse with the days, like vinegar turning mair sour. She'd screech at him for nothing. Stop that! Shouted Auntie Carlotta one evening as he slaggered down the soup he had made for her. Or I'll feed you to a bear. Stop what? They awful noises coming from inside your scunnersome body. Nicholas didn't ken what she was havering at. The only way to stop a rumbling belly was by eating. And as with most days, he'd only found enough mushrooms for Auntie Carlotta to hae soup. And the ones he'd slip it into his mouth in the forest hadna been enough. But then Auntie Carlotta smiled. A smile on her face was an unco thing to see, like a banana in the snaw. All right, you can hae some soup. Oh, thank you, Auntie Carlotta. I'm sae hungry, and I love mushroom soup. Auntie Carlotta shook her head. As ye always mak me soup, I thought I would repay the favours. Say, while you were out in the forest, I made some soup just for you. Micah was looking through the windy. Did he eat it? He squeaked in vain. Nicholas looked worried as he glowered down at the dark, grey-brown glabber. What is it made with? He speered. Love, said Auntie Carlotta. Nicholas kent she had to be haying him on. Auntie Carlotta couldna love ony mair than an ice shuggle could love. There's no fair to ice shuggles. Ice shuggles melt. Auntie Carlotta was as frozen as a frozen thing that was gey frozen, and wouldn't ever melt. Go on then, get it doon, ye. It was the most honking thing he had ever tasted. It was like eating glor and clart and water fae a dub. But he could feel Auntie Carlotta watching him, so he kept eating. Auntie Carlotta's cauld grey een gart Nicholas feel 100 times smaller than he was as she said what she'd said 100 times already. Your feathers glaik it. Nicholas didn't answer her back. He just kept sooking awa at the bouffing soup, feeling mair and mair seek. But Auntie Carlotta wasna gonna lay it there. Abody kens there is nae sic things as elves, she said, slavering as she spoke. Your father is a glaikit, thick-headed whane to believe things like yon. I'd be awfully surprised if he's aye alive. Nobody has ever been to the far north and returned to tell the tale. I was that stupid, coming here waiting on 500 rubles that wouldn't ever arrive. You can always go home. Och, wha canny noo? It's October. The nichts are fair drawn in, and I canny walk 10 mile in this weather. I'm here all winter noo, for Christmas. No that I gie a hoot for Christmas. It's a hateful time of year. He couldn't listen to that. Christmas is bra, Nicholas said. I love Christmas, and I didn't even care that it's the same day as my birthday. He was going to say, the only thing that spells Christmas is you, but he thought better no. Auntie Carlotta seemed genuinely dumbfounded. Who can you, a mocket, clarty, motherless laddie, love Christmas? If you were a rich merchant son in Turku or Helsinki, then I could understand it. But my brother has always been our poor to buy you a present. Nicholas felt a red blaze of anger kittle his skin. It was always magical, and I would rather hae a toy that was made with love than one that cost hundreds of money. But the only thing he ever made you was the sleigh. He was always our busy working. Nicholas thought of his old tumshy doll and wondered what it was. It wasn't aside the door where he had left it. Your father is a liar. No, said Nicholas. He had finished the soup, but now felt awfully no well. He promised you he'd come back. He'd tell you the elves were real. 'Twa lies, right there. Anyway, I'm wabbit noo, said his auntie. It's time for my bed. Say, now that you've finished your soup, if you can kindly get out of my sight, that would make me as happy as the Queen of Finland. This is my house now. I am your guardian. Say, I start doing exactly what I say, exactly as I say it. Get out! Gone! Nicholas stood up, his belly beeling. He kicked around the room. Where's my tumshy doll? Auntie Carlotta smiled. It was a proper smile, and one that was soon turning into a laugh. And then she said it. You've just eaten him! What? It ta'en a second. No, 2 seconds. Maybe 3. 3.5. Actually, nah, just 3. But then Nicholas realised what she had just said. His only toy in the world was new in his wame. He ran outside and he bolted up in the cludgy hole. What did you do that for? He speered in disbelief fae outside. My ma made me that. Well, she's nae longer here, is she? Said Auntie Carlotta, through the wee window which she had opened to get a better view on Nicholas being sick. Thank the Lord, used to nip my head listening to her bad singing all day. I just thought it was about time for you to grow up and leave your silly toys a hint. Nicholas had finished. He gaed back inside. He thought of his mother. He thought of her holding onto the chain that held the bucket as he tried to escape the bear. Who dare Auntie Carlotta say ill-tricket things about her? There was only the one option now, to run away. He couldn't stay here with Auntie Carlotta. He would prove his feather wasn't a liar, and there was only one way to do it. Cheerio, Auntie Carlotta, he said, just a whisper, under his breath. But he meant it. He was gone. He was going to find his feather. He was going to see the elves. He was going to mark Arthur a recht. This next chapter's called An Awfully Short Chapter with a long title in which just about hee-haw happens. Auntie Carlotta heaved something and didn't look back at him as she sklimmed into her bed with the twa mattresses. Nicholas took some of the fusty bread lying on the table, stacked it into his pooch, and gaed outside into the cold night. He was wabbit, his wame still ached, and his tongue tasted a minging neep, but he had something else, and smed him. Aye, he was gone to start the walk to the far north. Micah was nabbling on a dry leaf. The moose, he supposed, was the closest thing he had to a friend. I'm going to the far north. It'll be an awfully long and dangerous journey. There's an awfully high chance of death. I think you should stay here, Micah. It'll be warmer, but if you want to come with me, give me a signal. Micah kept anxiously at the door to the bothy. You didn't have to stay right here, Nicholas told him. You had a whole forest. Nicholas still couldn't speak moose. Micah glared at the whole forest. But there's nae cheese in the forest. Nicholas still couldn't speak moose, but kind of worked out what he was on about. Say, are you coming with me or no? Micah jinked up on his hind legs, and though Nicholas couldn't be entirely sure, it seemed that the moose nodded his wee head, and say he picked him up and put him in his left-hand coat pooch. Then, with Micah keeking out at the road ahead, Nicholas turned and headed north through the trees towards the place he thought he might find his feather and the elves, and he tried his hardest to believe in both. This chapter's called The Old Wife. He walked a night, and the next day he kept an eye out for the tall brown bear and saw paw prints on the ground, but no the crater itself. He walked to the edge of the pine forest and he followed the path around the banks of Loch Blitzen. The loch was sae muckle, and the water sae pure and still, that it was a perfect mirror of the lift. He travelled for days and nights. He spotted elk, and on 2 occasions he did see mair bears, black bears. And once he had to sclim a tree and wait an hour up in the branches for one of the bears to gie up and stramp awa in the snaw. He slept curried around the roots of the trees with Mika in his pooch or on the ground beside him. He lived off mushrooms and berries and fresh caller water. He kept himself gone by singing Christmas tunes to himself, even though it was nowhere near Christmas. And when he was bursting, made wee yellow holes in the snaw. He imagined being rich and walking up on Christmas Day haying all the toys in the toy shop. Then he imagined something far better, gieing his father a cuddy and pairt. But all the time, as he walked, it grew colder. Whiles his feet were sore, whiles he gaed hungry, but he was determined to keep going. At long last he passed through the clachan called Sepayarvi that his father had told him about. It was just one street full of wee wooden houses painted red. He walked along the street. An old wifey with nae teeth, blue bucket hour, a walking stick, was coming along the road. In Nicholas's sma experience, ilka clachan always had to hae one old toothless sow, walking around, flagging strangers. So he was pleased that Sepayarvi was nae exception. "Whar gang ye, mysterious laddie, wi' a moose in your pooch?" she said. "North," is a' he telled her. "To look for cheese," added Mika, who still hadn't really got the point of the journey. The old wife was gey weird, but no weird enough to understand moose language, so she just looked at Nicholas and shook her head. "No, north," she said, her face peely-wally as a sheet. A peely-wally sheet, like. "Gang east," she said, "or south, or west. Only a clown would gang north. Nobody bides in Lapland. There is nothing there." "Well, I must be a clown then," said Nicholas. "Nothing wrong with clowns," said a clown, with wee bells on his shoon that was passing by. "The thing is, I'm looking for my father. He's a woodcutter. He's called Joel. He wears a red hat. He has awfully tired in. He only has 9.5 fingers. He was with 6 other men. They were on their way to the far north." The old wifey looked him up and down, her face wrinkled like a map. And speaking of maps, she pulled out something half folded fae her pooch and handed it to him. A map. There was some men. Aye, now I think about it. 7 of them. They came through at the start of the summer. Sorry, I'll do that again. It's actually the wifey speaking. There was some men. Aye, now I think about it. 7 of them. They came through at the start of the summer. They had maps. Nicholas felt astounded excitement. They dragged this in. "Have they been back?" The old wife shook her head. "I tell ye, the ains that gang north dinna return." "Well, thank you very muckle," said Nicholas. He tried to smile, to hide his worry. He had to gie her something, and it would hae to be berries, as he didn't hae muckle else. Please, hae their berries." The auld wifey smiled in return, and Nicholas saw her gums were brown and rotten. "You're a good laddie. Tak my shawl. You'll need a' the warmth you can get." And Nicholas, could feel that even Mika, though relatively warm inside his coat pooch, was starting to chitter. Ta'en the gift and thanked her again, and gaed on his road. Here's the map showing the route to the far north. On and on he gaed, following the map, o'er moors and ice-covered lochs and snaw-covered fields and forests full of spruce trees. Yin after nin, Nicholas sat down underneath ane of the snai spruce trees and had a neb at his feet. They were beeling wi' blisters. The only bits of skin that weren't beeling wi' blisters were bricht reed, and his shoon that had been bochled to start wi' had more or less fallen to bits. "It's nae use," he told Mika. "I dinna think I can carry on. I'm ower wabbit. It's ower cauld getting. I doot I'll hae to gae hame." But even when he said the word hame, he realised that he didn't hae one. There was the bothy in the pine forest, but that wasna hame ony mair. No wee Auntie Carlotta biding there. No, when he wasna even able to sleep in his own bed. "Listen, Mika," he said, feeding the moose a mushroom as he sat down by a tree. "It micht be best for you if you stayed in this forest. Tak a look at the map. I dinna ken if we'll mak it." Nicholas and Mika gawped at the map, but the path they had to follow was marked by a dotted line that looked like footsteps in the snow. The map had nae straight lines on it. It was just one long curving path, snooving through forest and around lochs towards a muckle mountain. He kent the mountain was muckle because it was ca'd on the map Affy Muckle Mountain. He lifted the moose out of his pooch and put him on the ground. "Go on, Mika. You'll hae to leave me. Look, there's leaves and berries. You'll be able to bide here. Go on, away you go." The moose keeked up at him. "Leaves and berries? Dinna talk to me about leaves and berries." "I'm telling you, Mika, it's for the best." But Mika just crawled back onto Nicholas's foot, and Nicholas put the moose back in his pooch. Nicholas rested his head on the mossy ground and pulled the auld wife's shawl over him, and right there in the daylight he fell asleep. As he slept, snaw fell. He had a dream about being a bairn and gone to the hills near Loch Blitzen and obeying on the sleigh as his father pushed him and his mother laughed. He was so happy inside that dream. There was a scarting feeling, and he woke up with a start. Mika was pawing at his chest and squeaking with fear. "What is it, Mika?" "I dinna hear Scooby," squeaked Mika, "but it's Muckle, and it's got horns on its head." Sign, Nicholas saw it, the crater. It was so close that for a moment he didna ken what it was. It certainly seemed Muckle, by where Nicholas was sitting. But it wasna a bear. It was covered in dark grey fur and had a braid, strong-looking head, like an elk, but definitely no one. The crater's chest was heaving with deep breaths and wasna grey, but as white as the snaw. The beastie was macking unco soons, as if it was a grumphy, crossed wi' a woof. He saw the muckle velvet-haired antlers that bent and twisted like trees leaning in the wind. Syne he realised it was a reindeer, an awfy muckle, an awfy angry reindeer, and it was glowering straight at Nicholas. We'll have to wait and see what happens next. I hope you're enjoying it. A Laddie Cawed Christmas, published by Itchy Coo Press. See you next time.